Hi, I'm Bob Zimmerino, and this is my co-host,
Emily Seitz.
and welcome to Taste at Missoula. The dish that we're going to do today, this Pico De Gallo, are an onion, some garlic, and Emily's going to show you a couple great garlic tricks, one to mince it and the other one is to how to get it out of the skin. We have some fresh cilantro and some tomatoes, Roma tomatoes, perfect for what we're going to do. So we're going to start off with Emily showing you how to get that garlic down to a mince. So when we refer to something minced, she's going to show you exactly what you need to do.
So one of the things you want to make sure you do whenever you're working on your cutting board is make sure you clear your space. One of the things, a lot of people cut themselves or have problems because they crowd their cutting board. And it's one of those things that we've all done, I'm sure. This area on the knife is called the bolster. I'm right-handed. My pointer finger is going to wrap around the bolster. I'm going to keep it at balance.
And let me show you that, if I may. If you hold that knife just like that, it balances on your finger, and right there is where you grab it. My thumb on this side, my finger underneath. If you hold it too far up, you're going to really create a callus or a blister on your finger right there. But a lot of people, this is the one I actually see all the time.
Oh yeah, too far back.
You're afraid of the knife. You wouldn't hold it here because it feels out of balance. Well, it's out of balance here too. Okay, so right over the centerpiece, just like that, where you have the best control over the knife.
Have the blade away from you, have it on an angle, just tap it. You don't really have to tap it, I guess, that much, but the skin just easily comes off.
But you know, it doesn't hurt to tap it that much because what you now have is something that won't roll around when you're going to chop it.
Exactly.
Fingers perpendicular.
I've got my thumbs, kind of my safety point. I'm gonna just be feeding the garlic to my knife. All right.
Okay.
So I'm gonna take this garlic and I'm gonna put it in a bowl. So you're gonna do the onion, Bob? Mm-hmm. Right.
Onion, the same thing. I don't usually leave the back on the onion or the garlic myself, but again, personal preferences. I have my knife in good balance, but I'm going to do pretty much the same thing that Em did. I'm going to score through the onion most of the way. And what I'm doing here is a medium chop. Okay, you have medium-sized onion pieces, none too big, and then when you get to this piece here, you can just kind of go right down and finish busting it up. So an onion.
One of the things you can see Bob's doing is he's created two flat surfaces. By cutting that onion in half, that onion's
exactly
going to be
right.
stabilized and it's not going to roll around on your cutting board.
Now, something that I do differently than you, this is uncomfortable for me, but what I do is I hold my fingers perpendicular. In order to cut my fingers, I actually have to turn the knife blade and then go into them at that point. And, you know, this one, you end up having little hot dogs mixed in with your,
Sure.
This way you don't. So, and the same with the way that you did it. The protection of your hand is hugely important. So this is a medium chop. If I were going to be doing, say, a serrano, which happens to be in this dish, I'm going to do a larger chop. Now, I do recommend wearing gloves at a certain point if you're going to be doing this. I am okay without it because I know enough to wash my hands, and I'm also using my knife to deseed this serrano. Another thing that I would tell you that I noticed that you did that I would recommend you don't is turn your knife blade upside down when you have to drag it across a cutting board. It'll stay sharper a lot longer. So now, what I'm doing is something that Emily just pointed out is creating a flat surface so that I'm not basically trying to get a rounded, rolling object and slice it.
And that's true for whatever you're cutting, from apples, onions, to peppers. You're going to constantly be thinking, it's like a geometry game. How can I make a flat surface so I can have my knife be stable and less likely to hurt myself?
Or me. Okay, so now this is a small chop, and if you look at a small chop compared to a medium chop, you really can see the difference. Okay, so if I tell you to chop something small, it's that. Now look at the small chop compared to a mince. The mince is even finer than a small chop.
So maybe you remember we cut up an Anaheim before and we roasted it? Same thing as Bob just did. I'm gonna take the top off, put it in my compost, and I'm just gonna de-seed it with my bare hand. It's gonna be much milder than the other pepper. And I'm just reaching in with my finger and pulling out the seed. Pretty easy to do, just knock out the seeds. And sometimes, you know, it's not really that bad if you get a few seeds in there, because,
Right.
you know, it's not, you don't have to be perfect, but.
And with this Anaheim, we're going to do a slightly larger chop. We're going to go closer to a medium chop, actually, with the Anaheim. And one of the things that I would tell you is that the reason for the small chop with the Serrano is so that you don't ever bite into something that's really hot and have a big chunk of it in your mouth all at once. And again, there are people that love that. However, I think that you're going to find most people don't. They actually like to have the mixture of the hot and the other flavors all come at them at once.
So what size are you thinking, Bob?
Well, I think that you ought to go about like that, yeah.
Like that?
Yeah, that's perfect. And that's about the same chop as the onion. If you look at that. That's a medium chop right there.
So Bob, Pico De Gallo, what's that mean?
Pico De Gallo. Oh, you really had to throw one at me, didn't you?
Pico De Gallo?
I can't remember. I actually looked it up.
Beak of the rooster.
Oh, that's right. The rooster's beak. That's right. Really nice. All right, we're even. I got you on the knife thing. So here we go on the poblanos now. I'm just going to lay this poblano out, cut it in half. And what I want on the poblano is I want a larger chop. And so on the poblano, we're looking at a chop that gives you some nice chunks. And you'll get some automatic mediums because you're going to get down to the bottom end of the poblano and there just isn't enough. But I want bigger pieces. And the reason that I'm doing that is because, just like anything else, different flavors, different textures, when I want you to get a mouthful of these different foods, these different peppers, I want you to taste them at varying degrees. So the larger chop works for this, so you get a good full hit of the poblano pepper.
So you can think of it like this: the larger the chop, the milder the flavor.
That's correct.
The higher the heat, the mince.
That's exactly correct. So now we're going to make, and oh, we got to do the tomatoes. So the tomatoes, I don't know if you do it this way or not, but I cut off the tops. That way I have a flat surface to deal with. Again, another flat surface. I want a medium chop on these tomatoes.
So Pico de Gallo means beak of the rooster, a rooster's beak. But one of the ideas, obviously, we're not eating rooster beaks here. It's just this food that you kind of peck at, that you eat as an appetizer.
As an appetizer, right, exactly.
So it's, you know, like the British term, if you're peckish, you're a little bit hungry, you're just going to be eating a little bit. Or maybe a lot, because it's pretty good.
You bet. We've got our garlic, we've got our peppers in there. We're going to add our garlic right into it. You know, we're going to need a bigger bowl to mix all of this.
Sure.
Exactly what I said the last time. If you would grab one, please. We're going to add our hot pepper to it, the Serrano. We're going to take all of that and put it in this bowl.
And there's a lot of different options too with your onion. Some people don't want to eat raw onion. What you can do is if you chop your onion and have it soaking in water for about 5-10 minutes, it's going to reduce some of that intensity if, you know, the raw onion taste isn't what you're after.
Now I'm adding lime juice to it. That great flavor of lime juice. It also, one of the things that I really like about the lime juice in this is it really gives it like a freshness. I mean, it really does. It really does add to that fresh flavor.
The acid in the lime is going to help bring out the flavors in the other ingredients.
That's
especially
exactly right.
A little bit of salt or garlic, that's going to pop.
It'll cause the sugars to react. The acid and the sugars will work off of each other really well. So I just basically took 2 limes and squeezed them into here, and that's all the juice that you need for this salsa. We're going to add a little bit of salt.
And one of the things you're probably watching while Bob adds the salt is he's not putting his hand really close to the bowl. He's up high and moving. One of the things to think about is with your salt, you can have your hand high above and go from the exterior to the interior of the bowl. to get a more even finish. You never want to take salt and just dump it in. It's going to just be really concentrated.
You're going to have one piece that's going to be
You're
really
gonna
salty.
have like a little salt
and the
lick.
rest of it's going to be not as salty, and it creates an imbalance in the dish. Cumin is a very common spice. It's actually a Mediterranean spice, but there's also a Mexican version of cumin, and it's popular, and you've probably tasted it a million times. It's a seed, and it's a ground seed in this case. The problem that I have with cumin is that it's oftentimes overused, and it becomes the only flavor that you taste. So with this cumin, I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit around, and I mean a little bit, maybe a half of a teaspoon. And then we're going to add some cilantro, which is another flavor that I think is oftentimes overused. And when it's overused, it dominates the dish. To me, it will ruin that dish if you have too much of it in there. But there is a right amount, and it also adds a nice little color. The other thing that I would add to this is just a little bit of chili powder. And again, you have to be careful because there's cumin in chili powder. So those are the ingredients for this dish.
Can I show you a trick with cilantro, Bob?
Oh, sure, I'd love to see it.
You can apply it for parsley as well. And you're actually kind of shaving the cilantro.
Right, you bunch it up.
Bunch it up, yeah, just take it up, bunch it up in your non-knife hand. Have the bunch away from you. Take your sharp knife and you just shave the cilantro around. Doesn't matter if you get a little bit of the stems. And then you can just do what you were doing before. Take it up.
To chop and mince it.
Exactly. Can we add a little more cilantro to that?
No, I
No?
don't think so. I think we got just about the right
All right.
amount. I just like it to be a little bit of a backdrop. And if you notice, you can see the coverage in the bowl here is pretty tight. There's a little bit of cilantro on a lot of it. So that's kind of what you want. If you want to just throw that in there, that'd be
Yeah.
fine. I'm going to pull the chili relleno that we have baking right
Good, I'm hungry.
Look how beautiful that looks. Oh,
That's your pepper loaf there, Bob?
that's my pepper loaf. Well, you know, I am a diabetic, and so I do not eat deep fried foods hardly ever.
I think we should taste it.
I'm ready. Go ahead.
All right.
Ladies before gentlemen. Although I've never been really referred to that way.
There's always a first, Bob.
You think?
Yeah.
I got a chance?
Yeah. It's good.
Whoa. I'm just going to throw mine all over the room. With
Remember-
a tomato in there.
It's good.
Here's what I like about this. You have the fresh, and it's cool, and you have the hot. The hot has softer textures, the fresh has those fresh, chewy textures, and it really makes for a tremendous dish. Healthy, great for breakfast, great for dinner, even for lunch. I highly recommend it. This is Taste at Missoula. Emily and I will be back next week. We will have another dish for you. We're excited to do so.
And our recipe's online, so check us out.
That's right, at makeitmissoula.com. Thanks to the Good Food Store for being our sponsor.